Question 1. Strategic planning requires a methodical approach to optimizing security policies to enhance network performance and maintain a strong security posture. Which of the following represents the most effective strategy for achieving this balance? Option A. Rely on vendor recommendations for policy optimization without independent verification or testing, assuming their solutions are universally applicable. Option B. Immediately implement all identified policy optimizations directly into the production environment to realize performance gains as quickly as possible. Option C. Prioritize performance gains over security considerations, making broad policy changes that might reduce security scrutiny to achieve faster network speeds. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of existing policies to identify redundancies and inefficiencies, followed by a phased implementation of optimized policies, including pilot testing and post-deployment monitoring. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of existing policies to identify redundancies and inefficiencies, followed by a phased implementation of optimized policies, including pilot testing and post-deployment monitoring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for efficient security policy management with the imperative to maintain robust security posture. The administrator must consider how changes to security policies impact overall system performance and the potential for introducing vulnerabilities. The pressure to quickly implement changes without thorough testing or analysis can lead to unintended consequences, including performance degradation or security gaps, which are critical concerns for any organization. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and phased implementation of policy changes. This includes thorough analysis of the proposed changes, impact assessment on network performance and security, a pilot deployment in a controlled environment, and comprehensive monitoring post-implementation. This methodology aligns with best practices in IT service management and security operations, emphasizing risk mitigation and validation. For a checkpoint, Certified Security Administrator R81. This translates to leveraging the platform's capabilities for policy optimization, such as using the Policy Optimizer tool to identify redundant or conflicting rules, and then carefully testing the refined policy before full deployment. This ensures that security objectives are met without compromising network efficiency, adhering to the principle of least privilege, and maintaining a strong security posture, as mandated by general IT security best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing policy changes without prior analysis or impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical due diligence, increasing the risk of introducing security vulnerabilities or causing network instability. This approach neglects the fundamental responsibility of an administrator to ensure the integrity and security of the network. Deploying changes directly to production without a pilot phase is also professionally unacceptable. It demonstrates a disregard for risk management and can lead to widespread service disruption, potentially violating service-level agreements and organizational policies. Furthermore, relying solely on intuition or anecdotal evidence when making security policy decisions, rather than data-driven analysis and testing, is a failure of professional responsibility. It can lead to suboptimal security configurations and missed opportunities for performance enhancement, ultimately undermining the organization's security objectives. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to process optimization. This involves understanding the current state, identifying areas for improvement, proposing solutions, evaluating their potential impact, and implementing them in a controlled manner. For security policy optimization, this means utilizing available tools, conducting thorough testing, and documenting all changes and their outcomes. A decision-making framework should prioritize risk assessment, impact analysis, and validation at each stage of the process. This ensures that changes are beneficial, secure, and do not negatively affect the operational environment. Question 2. System analysis indicates a checkpoint security gateway is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting network throughput and latency. The administrator needs to address this issue efficiently while maintaining the highest level of security. Which of the following approaches is the most appropriate for resolving this performance bottleneck? Option A. Document the performance issue and defer any remediation efforts until a more convenient time, assuming the problem may resolve itself. Option B. Temporarily disable specific security blades that are suspected of consuming excessive resources until the performance issue is resolved. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of system logs and performance monitoring data to identify the specific processes or traffic patterns causing the degradation, followed by targeted configuration adjustments or vendor-recommended optimizations. Option D. Implement a series of broad, untested configuration changes across multiple security policies and profiles in an attempt to alleviate the resource strain. The correct answer is B. Temporarily disable specific security blades that are suspected of consuming excessive resources until the performance issue is resolved. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, optimizing the performance of a critical security appliance without compromising its security posture or violating operational policies. The administrator must balance the need for efficiency with the imperative to maintain robust security controls. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of performance degradation and implementing a solution that is both effective and compliant with established procedures and potential regulatory guidelines relevant to data protection and system integrity. Even if not explicitly stated in the exam syllabus, the underlying principles of secure and efficient operation are paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation. This begins with thorough logging and monitoring to pinpoint the specific processes or traffic patterns causing the performance bottleneck. Once identified, the administrator can then implement targeted optimizations, such as tuning specific security profiles, adjusting resource allocation, or applying vendor-recommended patches or configuration changes. This methodical process ensures that changes are made with a clear understanding of their impact, minimizing the risk of unintended security vulnerabilities or operational disruptions. This aligns with best practices for system administration, emphasizing proactive problem-solving and informed decision-making. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling security features outright is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. Security features are in place to protect sensitive data and ensure compliance with various data protection mandates. Disabling them, even temporarily, creates significant vulnerabilities, potentially leading to data breaches, unauthorized access, and non-compliance with regulations governing data privacy and security. This action demonstrates a disregard for the fundamental principles of information security and a failure to uphold professional responsibility. Implementing broad, untested configuration changes without prior analysis is also professionally unacceptable. Such actions can introduce unforeseen security weaknesses, disrupt legitimate network traffic, or negatively impact system stability. This approach lacks the due diligence required for managing critical security infrastructure and could lead to compliance issues if it inadvertently exposes the network to threats or causes service outages. Ignoring the performance issue and hoping it resolves itself is a passive and negligent approach. It fails to address a known problem that could escalate, potentially leading to system failure, data loss, or security breaches. This inaction constitutes a dereliction of duty and a failure to maintain the security and operational integrity of the network, which could have significant regulatory and business consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach performance issues with a structured methodology. This involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the symptoms and scope of the performance degradation. 2. Data collection. Utilize logging, monitoring tools, and diagnostic utilities to gather relevant data. 3. Root cause analysis. Analyze the collected data to determine the underlying cause of the issue. 4. Solution development. Propose and evaluate potential solutions, considering their impact on security, performance, and stability. 5. Implementation. Apply the chosen solution in a controlled manner, ideally during a maintenance window. 6. Verification. Monitor the system post-implementation to confirm the issue is resolved and no new problems have arisen. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, risks are mitigated, and professional standards are upheld. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a comprehensive security policy update across all network segments simultaneously would be prohibitively disruptive to ongoing business operations. Given the recent security incident, there is an urgent need to enhance security posture. Which approach best optimizes the process of improving security while minimizing operational impact? Option A, focusing exclusively on technically complex security features that offer the highest theoretical protection, without regard for ease of management or staff training. Option B, a phased implementation strategy, prioritizing critical assets and vulnerabilities identified in the incident response report, with ongoing monitoring and iterative adjustments. Option C, a broad, system-wide security policy change implemented immediately across all network segments to ensure uniform protection. Option D, deployment of the most advanced security solutions recommended by the vendor, regardless of current infrastructure compatibility or operational impact. The correct answer is B, a phased implementation strategy, prioritizing critical assets and vulnerabilities identified in the incident response report, with ongoing monitoring and iterative adjustments. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT security administration, balancing the immediate need for enhanced security with the operational impact and resource constraints. The administrator must not only understand the technical implications of different security configurations, but also consider their practical feasibility and alignment with organizational policies and potential regulatory requirements. The pressure to implement a robust security posture quickly, especially after a security incident, can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical factors. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy, prioritizing critical assets and vulnerabilities. This aligns with best practices in process optimization and risk management. By focusing on high-impact areas first, the organization can achieve a significant security improvement with a manageable deployment. This approach allows for iterative testing and refinement, minimizing disruption to ongoing operations. Furthermore, it demonstrates due diligence in addressing security concerns in a structured and accountable manner, which is crucial for compliance with any relevant security frameworks or standards that might be implicitly or explicitly required by the organization's operational context. This methodical approach ensures that resources are allocated effectively and that the security enhancements are sustainable. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, system-wide security policy change without prior assessment or phased rollout is a significant risk. This approach can lead to widespread operational disruptions, user complaints, and potential system instability, negating the intended security benefits through unmanageable complexity and unforeseen conflicts. It fails to optimize the process by not prioritizing efforts, potentially wasting resources on less critical areas while leaving high-risk vulnerabilities exposed for longer. Deploying security solutions based solely on vendor recommendations, without internal validation or consideration of the specific network environment, is also problematic. Vendors may not fully understand the unique operational context, existing infrastructure, or specific compliance obligations of the organization. This can result in misconfigurations, performance degradation, or the implementation of controls that are either redundant or insufficient for the actual threat landscape. This approach bypasses essential due diligence and risk assessment steps, focusing exclusively on the most technically complex security features without considering their operational impact or the training needs of the IT staff, is another flawed strategy. While technically advanced, these features might be difficult to manage, troubleshoot, or even utilize effectively, leading to security gaps due to improper implementation or configuration. This neglects the human element and operational realities of maintaining a secure environment, which is a critical component of any effective security process. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security enhancements by first conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets and vulnerabilities. This should be followed by a cost-benefit analysis that considers not only financial costs, but also operational impact, resource availability, and potential downtime. A phased implementation plan, prioritizing the most critical areas, allows for controlled deployment, testing, and user feedback. Regular review and adaptation of security policies and configurations based on evolving threats and operational needs are essential for maintaining an effective security posture. This systematic and iterative approach ensures that security measures are both effective and sustainable within the organization's operational framework. Question 4. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to integrating new technologies. A network administrator is considering a new security solution that promises enhanced performance and cost savings. However, The solution is from a vendor with limited prior engagement with the organization. What is the most responsible course of action to ensure both security and compliance? Option A. Rely on the vendor's claims and certifications regarding the security of their solution and proceed with a full rollout. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the new technology, including vulnerability testing in a controlled lab environment, before considering full deployment. Option C. Immediately implement the new security solution to capitalize on its advertised benefits and cost efficiencies. Option D. Deploy the new technology across a small segment of the network for initial testing, without a formal risk assessment. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the new technology, including vulnerability testing in a controlled lab environment, before considering full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, where a new, potentially beneficial technology must be integrated while adhering to strict security policies and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in balancing innovation with risk management, ensuring that any new solution does not introduce vulnerabilities or violate established security baselines and compliance mandates. The administrator must consider not only the technical feasibility, but also the potential impact on data privacy, system integrity, and the organization's overall security posture, all within the context of specific regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and a phased, controlled implementation. This aligns with best practices in cybersecurity and regulatory frameworks that emphasize a proactive, risk-based approach to security. By first understanding the potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the new technology, and then testing it in a controlled environment, the administrator ensures that any security gaps are identified and mitigated before full deployment. This methodical process minimizes the risk of introducing new attack vectors, protects sensitive data, and maintains compliance with security standards. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining a robust security posture, which is often a requirement for regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new technology immediately without any assessment or testing is a direct violation of security best practices and likely regulatory requirements that mandate risk management and due diligence. This approach introduces significant, unmitigated risks to the network and sensitive data, potentially leading to breaches and noncompliance. Deploying the technology only after a brief, superficial review of its marketing materials, without independent validation or testing, is insufficient. This overlooks potential security flaws that vendors may not disclose and fails to account for the specific network environment and existing security controls. This lack of thoroughness can lead to compliance failures and security incidents. Focusing solely on the cost savings of the new technology without a comprehensive security evaluation is a critical error. While cost effectiveness is important, it must not supersede security and compliance obligations. Prioritizing cost over security can lead to significant financial and reputational damage if a breach occurs, ultimately costing far more than the initial savings. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that prioritizes security and compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the need or opportunity. 2. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of any proposed solution, considering technical, operational, and compliance implications. 3. Developing a phased implementation plan that includes rigorous testing in a controlled environment. 4. Documenting all assessments, decisions, and implementation steps. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating security measures in response to evolving threats and technologies. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and compliance is maintained. Question 5. Assessment of a request to temporarily bypass a critical security policy on a production firewall to allow a new, unvetted third-party application to communicate with internal sensitive data servers for a limited duration, pending a full security review. The administrator has received a verbal request from a senior manager with a vague justification about urgent business needs. Option A. Grant the bypass by disabling the specific security rule for the duration of the urgent business need, assuming the manager's request implies a thorough internal vetting process has already occurred. Option B. Immediately implement the bypass as requested by the senior manager, prioritizing the urgent business need over the security policy to avoid disrupting critical operations. The security review can be conducted later once the immediate business requirement is met. Option C. Document the request, clearly outlining the business justification provided, the specific security policy to be bypassed, and the proposed duration. Conduct a rapid, albeit limited, risk assessment to identify immediate threats. Implement compensating controls such as enhanced logging and monitoring for the affected traffic, and schedule an immediate follow-up for a full security review of the application and its integration. Obtain written approval from the requesting manager and a designated security officer before implementing any temporary bypass. Option D. Deny the request outright, citing the critical nature of the security policy and the lack of a formal, documented security assessment for the third-party application. Inform the requesting manager that the application must undergo the full security review process before any network access can be considered. The correct answer is C. Document the request, clearly outlining the business justification provided, the specific security policy to be bypassed, and the proposed duration. Conduct a rapid, albeit limited, risk assessment to identify immediate threats. Implement compensating controls such as enhanced logging and monitoring for the affected traffic, and schedule an immediate follow-up for a full security review of the application and its integration. Obtain written approval from the requesting manager and a designated security officer before implementing any temporary bypass. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for security administrators, balancing the need for robust security with operational requirements and potential user impact. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a dynamic environment where business needs can conflict with strict security controls. The administrator must make a judgment call that upholds the organization's security posture while minimizing disruption, all within the defined regulatory framework for Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81. The correct approach involves a systematic, policy-driven decision-making process. It prioritizes understanding the business justification for the exception, assessing the associated risks, and implementing compensating controls. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established organizational policies and regulatory guidelines. The regulatory framework for Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81 emphasizes a proactive and risk-aware approach to security management, which this method embodies. An incorrect approach would be to grant the exception without proper due diligence. This could lead to security vulnerabilities, potential data breaches, and non-compliance with internal policies and external regulations. For instance, simply allowing the traffic based on a verbal request without documenting the justification and risk assessment would be a failure to adhere to the principles of accountability and due diligence expected in a security administration role. Another incorrect approach would be to rigidly deny the request without exploring potential solutions or understanding the business impact, which could hinder legitimate business operations and create friction between IT security and other departments. This demonstrates a lack of flexibility and a failure to engage in collaborative problem-solving, which are crucial for effective security management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes understanding the request and its business context, identifying potential security risks, evaluating the severity and likelihood of those risks, exploring alternative solutions, documenting the decision and its rationale, and implementing appropriate controls or mitigation strategies. This structured approach ensures that security decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 6. Comparative studies suggest that the introduction of new security policies, particularly those affecting remote access for critical business functions, can significantly impact user productivity and operational workflows. As a Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81, you are tasked with implementing a new, more stringent remote access security policy. Considering the potential for disruption, which of the following approaches best balances enhanced security with operational continuity and stakeholder satisfaction, adhering to the principles of responsible security administration? Option A. Focus solely on the technical configuration of the new policy, assuming users will adapt to any necessary workflow changes without explicit communication or training. Option B. Immediately deploy the new security policy across all remote users to ensure uniform application of enhanced security measures. Option C. Implement the new policy only for a select few non-critical remote users to minimize initial disruption, with no immediate plan for broader deployment. Option D. Conduct a pilot program with a diverse group of remote users, gather feedback, and iteratively refine the policy and deployment strategy before a full rollout. The correct answer is B. Immediately deploy the new security policy across all remote users to ensure uniform application of enhanced security measures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for security administrators, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements and potential impact on user productivity. The introduction of a new, potentially disruptive security policy, especially one that affects a critical business function like remote access, requires careful consideration of stakeholder impact, technical feasibility, and adherence to established security frameworks. The challenge lies in ensuring that the security posture is strengthened without causing undue disruption or violating any implicit or explicit organizational policies or regulatory guidelines that might govern data access and availability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation and thorough testing, prioritizing a pilot program with a representative group of users. This aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation, which are implicitly supported by the principles of security governance and operational resilience often found in regulatory frameworks governing information security. By testing the new policy in a controlled environment, the administrator can identify and address potential issues, gather user feedback, and refine the implementation strategy before a full rollout. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of widespread disruption and ensures that the security policy effectively enhances security without negatively impacting essential business operations. This also demonstrates due diligence in assessing the impact of security changes, a key tenet in many compliance standards. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the new policy immediately across the entire organization without prior testing or user consultation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It disregards the principle of least disruption and could lead to widespread operational failures, impacting business continuity. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in assessing the impact of security changes, potentially violating organizational policies that mandate change management and risk assessment. Deploying the policy only to a small, non-representative group of users without a clear plan for broader rollout or feedback collection is also problematic. While it attempts a limited test, it lacks the comprehensive evaluation needed to ensure the policy's effectiveness and scalability. This can lead to a false sense of security if the pilot group's experience is not indicative of the broader user base, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable or facing unexpected issues during a later, larger deployment. Focusing solely on the technical implementation of the policy without considering user impact or potential workarounds is another failure. Security policies are only effective if they are understood and adhered to by users. Ignoring user experience can lead to resistance, non-compliance, and the development of insecure workarounds, ultimately undermining the intended security benefits and potentially creating new vulnerabilities. This approach neglects the human element of security, which is often a critical component of regulatory compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the business context and the criticality of the function being secured. This involves engaging with stakeholders, including end users and management, to understand their needs and concerns. A risk-based approach is essential, where potential security threats are identified and prioritized. Security controls should be designed to mitigate these risks effectively while minimizing operational impact. A structured change management process, including thorough testing, pilot programs, and clear communication, is crucial. Professionals should always aim for solutions that are both secure and practical, ensuring that security measures are integrated seamlessly into existing workflows where possible. This iterative and collaborative approach fosters trust, ensures compliance, and ultimately leads to a more robust and sustainable security posture. Question 7. The evaluation methodology shows that a security administrator has received an alert indicating a potential zero-day exploit targeting a specific application within the organization's network. The alert originates from an internal monitoring system and lacks definitive proof of compromise, but suggests a high probability of a novel attack vector. The administrator must decide on the immediate course of action to protect the organization while minimizing operational disruption. Option A. Escalate the alert to senior management for a decision on how to proceed, without undertaking any immediate investigative or mitigation steps to avoid making an unauthorized change. Option B. Initiate a controlled investigation to validate the alert, consult threat intelligence, and if confirmed, implement a targeted, temporary mitigation strategy with a plan for a permanent fix while communicating with relevant stakeholders. Option C. Immediately block all inbound and outbound traffic associated with the IP addresses flagged in the alert to prevent any potential exploitation, regardless of the impact on legitimate network traffic. Option D. Disregard the alert as it is unconfirmed and lacks definitive proof of compromise, assuming the internal monitoring system may have generated a false positive. The correct answer is B. Initiate a controlled investigation to validate the alert, consult threat intelligence, and if confirmed, implement a targeted temporary mitigation strategy with a plan for a permanent fix, while communicating with relevant stakeholders. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust security posture and ensuring operational continuity, especially when faced with a potential zero-day vulnerability. The administrator must balance the immediate need to protect the organization's assets with the potential disruption caused by implementing unproven or untested security measures. The regulatory framework for Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81, while not explicitly detailing specific U.S. federal regulations, implies adherence to general principles of due diligence, risk management, and responsible disclosure as expected within the IT security profession. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-based response. This involves thorough investigation, validation of the threat, and a controlled implementation of mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of incident response and change management, ensuring that any security adjustments are deliberate and minimize unintended consequences. It also reflects a commitment to informed decision-making, avoiding hasty actions that could introduce new vulnerabilities or disrupt critical business functions. An incorrect approach that involves immediately blocking all traffic from the suspected source without proper validation is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a denial of service for legitimate users and business operations, causing significant financial and reputational damage. Such an action would fail to demonstrate due diligence in assessing the actual threat and its scope, potentially violating the implicit expectation of responsible network management. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the alert due to its unconfirmed nature, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a failure to acknowledge and manage potential risks, leaving the organization exposed to a credible threat. This negligence could be viewed as a breach of professional responsibility to protect organizational assets and data. The professional reasoning process should involve a systematic evaluation of the alert. This includes gathering all available information, consulting threat intelligence, and performing initial diagnostics to confirm the validity and scope of the potential vulnerability. Based on this assessment, a risk-based decision should be made regarding the appropriate response, which might range from enhanced monitoring to immediate mitigation, always considering the potential impact on business operations. This iterative process of assessment, decision, and action, followed by verification, is crucial for effective security administration. Question 8. Comparative studies suggest that network administrators often face scenarios where user requests for access may conflict with established security policies. In a situation where a critical business application requires access to a resource that is currently blocked by a security policy, what is the most professionally responsible course of action for a checkpoint security administrator? Option A. Escalate the request directly to senior management without performing any initial risk assessment or exploring potential solutions. Option B. Deny access to the resource without further investigation, citing the strict adherence to the existing security policy. Option C. Document the request, assess the security risks associated with granting temporary access, explore potential secure workarounds, and initiate the formal change management process for a policy exception if deemed necessary and approved by relevant stakeholders. Option D. Immediately grant access to the resource after a brief verbal confirmation from the user about the business criticality, bypassing formal policy review. The correct answer is D. Immediately grant access to the resource after a brief verbal confirmation from the user about the business criticality, bypassing formal policy review. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The administrator must interpret and apply security policies in a dynamic environment where user access needs can conflict with established security controls. The challenge lies in making a decision that upholds the integrity of the security posture while minimizing disruption to critical business functions, all within the defined regulatory framework of the exam. The administrator must consider the potential impact of both granting and denying access, and the implications of any deviation from policy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established change management procedures. This means understanding the specific security implications of the requested exception, documenting the justification for the exception, and obtaining the necessary approvals from relevant stakeholders, e.g., security team, business unit management. This process ensures that any deviation from policy is deliberate, understood, and managed. It aligns with best practices for security governance, which emphasize accountability, transparency, and risk mitigation. By following these steps, the administrator demonstrates professional diligence and ensures that security decisions are not made in isolation, but are integrated with business objectives and risk appetite. This approach is implicitly supported by the principles of security management frameworks that are foundational to certifications like Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator, which emphasize policy enforcement and controlled exceptions. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting immediate access without proper review or documentation is a significant security failure. It bypasses established security controls and creates a potential vulnerability. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for policy, which could lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, or other security incidents. Ethically and professionally, this is unacceptable as it prioritizes expediency over security. Denying access outright without considering the business impact or exploring alternative secure solutions is also problematic. While it upholds the letter of the policy, it can hinder business operations and lead to user frustration. A professional administrator should explore if a secure, policy-compliant alternative exists or if a documented, risk-assessed exception can be made. This approach lacks the nuanced problem-solving expected of a security professional. Escalating the issue without attempting any initial assessment or understanding of the request places an undue burden on higher management and delays a resolution. While escalation is sometimes necessary, it should be a last resort after the administrator has gathered sufficient information and performed a preliminary analysis. This approach demonstrates a lack of initiative and problem-solving capability. Professional reasoning. Professionals in network security administration must adopt a systematic approach to security challenges. This involves understanding the security policy, assessing the risk associated with any proposed action, documenting all decisions and justifications, and adhering to established change management processes. When faced with a conflict between security policy and operational needs, a professional should first seek to understand the request and its implications. Then, they should evaluate potential solutions, including whether a secure, policy-compliant method exists. If an exception is truly necessary, it must be formally requested, justified with a risk assessment, and approved by appropriate authorities. This structured decision-making process ensures that security remains robust while supporting legitimate business needs. Question 9. Compliance review shows that a critical business application is inaccessible due to a misconfiguration in a security policy, impacting revenue. The operations team urgently requests immediate access to the application server for troubleshooting. As the Checkpoint Security Administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action to address this urgent request while maintaining security and compliance? Option A. Create a permanent, broad access rule to bypass the problematic policy for the affected server, ensuring the operations team can always reach it. Option B. Grant the operations team full administrative access to the server via a remote management tool without any firewall rule changes, assuming they will not cause further issues. Option C. Immediately disable the firewall rule that is causing the issue to restore access, and address the misconfiguration later when time permits. Option D. Implement a temporary, time-bound access rule with strict logging enabled, requiring documented approval from the security manager, and schedule a follow-up to permanently resolve the misconfiguration. The correct answer is D. Implement a temporary, time-bound access rule with strict logging enabled, requiring documented approval from the security manager, and schedule a follow-up to permanently resolve the misconfiguration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for network access with the long-term security posture and compliance requirements. A security administrator must interpret and apply security policies in a dynamic environment where business needs can sometimes conflict with strict security protocols. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass established security controls, creating significant risks. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a temporary, auditable exception that requires explicit approval from a designated security authority and includes a defined remediation timeline, aligns with best practices for security administration. This approach acknowledges the business imperative while ensuring that security is not permanently compromised. It adheres to the principle of least privilege and maintains accountability. The temporary nature of the exception, coupled with a clear plan for permanent remediation, demonstrates a commitment to both operational continuity and robust security, which is implicitly supported by the need for documented security controls and risk management inherent in any security framework. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing unrestricted access without any form of logging or oversight is a direct violation of security best practices and regulatory expectations for auditability. This creates a blind spot, making it impossible to track who accessed what and when, which is critical for incident response and compliance. Granting permanent access without a formal review or remediation plan bypasses the established change management and security policy enforcement processes. This can lead to the accumulation of security vulnerabilities and a degradation of the overall security posture, which would be flagged in any compliance audit. Implementing a solution that is technically secure but does not involve any form of documentation or approval from a security stakeholder fails to establish accountability and transparency. This can lead to unauthorized configurations and a lack of awareness regarding critical security changes within the organization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the business impact and urgency. Then, they must consult the relevant security policies and procedures. If an immediate solution is required that deviates from standard policy, the professional decision-making process involves identifying the minimum necessary deviation, seeking appropriate temporary authorization, documenting the exception thoroughly, and establishing a clear plan for full remediation. This structured approach ensures that business needs are met without sacrificing security or compliance. Question 10. The control framework reveals that a critical business application is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues, with users reporting that their access is being blocked by the checkpoint security gateway. The application owner has requested an immediate resolution, suggesting that the security policy is too restrictive. As the checkpoint security administrator, what is the most professional and compliant course of action to address this situation? Option A. Immediately disable the security rule that appears to be causing the blockage to restore application functionality and investigate the logs later. Option B. Create a broad allow all rule for the application's IP address to ensure connectivity, deferring a detailed policy review. Option C. Inform the application owner that security policies cannot be altered to accommodate specific application needs and advise them to find a workaround. Option D. Analyze the checkpoint traffic logs to identify the specific security rules blocking the application's traffic, and then implement a precisely defined exception or modification to the policy, ensuring minimal security impact. The correct answer is D. Analyze the checkpoint traffic logs to identify the specific security rules blocking the application's traffic, and then implement a precisely defined exception or modification to the policy, ensuring minimal security impact. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81 exam focuses on practical implementation and management of security policies. The core of this challenge lies in interpreting and applying security policy rules effectively, especially when faced with conflicting demands. The correct approach involves a systematic, evidence-based decision-making process that prioritizes security integrity while seeking to understand and accommodate legitimate business needs. This aligns with best practices in security governance, which emphasize risk management and the principle of least privilege. Specifically, within the context of Checkpoint R81 administration, this means leveraging the management interface to analyze traffic logs, understand the nature of the blocked traffic, and then making informed modifications to the security policy. This approach is professionally sound because it is data-driven, minimizes disruption, and ensures that any policy changes are deliberate and justifiable, adhering to the implicit regulatory expectation of maintaining a secure and functional network. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disable the security rule or bypass the checkpoint gateway without proper investigation. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses the established security controls without understanding the potential risks, which could expose the organization to vulnerabilities. Such an action would violate the principle of due diligence in security management. Another incorrect approach would be to blindly create a broad exception rule that allows all traffic from the affected source to the destination without granular inspection. This is a failure of the principle of least privilege and significantly increases the attack surface, potentially violating compliance requirements that mandate specific security controls for sensitive data or systems. A third incorrect approach would be to simply inform the application owner that the security policy cannot be changed, without offering any alternative solutions or further investigation. This demonstrates a lack of customer service and proactive problem solving, which, while not a direct regulatory violation, falls short of professional IT security standards. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Incident identification and triage. Recognize the reported issue and its potential impact. 2. Information gathering. Collect all relevant data including traffic logs, application requirements, and business impact. 3. Root cause analysis. Determine why the traffic is being blocked by the security policy. 4. Solution development. Propose and evaluate potential solutions, considering security implications, operational impact, and feasibility. 5. Implementation and verification. Apply the chosen solution and confirm its effectiveness and lack of negative side effects. 6. Documentation. Record all actions taken, justifications, and outcomes. Question 11. The monitoring system demonstrates a sustained pattern of unusual outbound network traffic originating from a critical database server, coinciding with a recent phishing campaign targeting employees. The administrator suspects a potential data exfiltration event. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action, considering the need to comply with U.S. data breach notification laws and the organization's incident response plan? Option A. Begin a full system backup of the affected server to preserve data integrity before any containment actions are taken. Option B. Immediately notify all employees about the potential breach to ensure transparency and allow them to take protective measures. Option C. Continue monitoring the traffic to gather more evidence of data exfiltration before taking any action to avoid unnecessary disruption and false alarms. Option D. Immediately isolate the affected database server from the network to prevent further data loss and initiate the incident response plan's notification procedures, including informing legal counsel and relevant regulatory bodies as per established timelines. Correct answer is D. Immediately isolate the affected database server from the network to prevent further data loss and initiate the incident response plan's notification procedures, including informing legal counsel and relevant regulatory bodies as per established timelines. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential security incident involving unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to contain the threat with the regulatory obligations to notify affected parties and relevant authorities within prescribed timeframes. This scenario is professionally challenging because a misstep in either containment or notification can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The administrator must make a rapid, informed decision under pressure, adhering strictly to the established incident response plan and relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a systematic, phased response that prioritizes containment and eradication, while simultaneously initiating the notification process as dictated by the incident response plan and applicable regulations. This aligns with best professional practices by minimizing the impact of the breach, preventing further unauthorized access, and fulfilling legal and ethical duties to inform stakeholders. Specifically, for a U.S.-based scenario governed by regulations like HIPAA for health data or GDPR, if applicable to U.S. entities processing EU citizen data, timely and accurate notification is a legal mandate. The incident response plan, which should be developed in accordance with NIST guidelines or similar frameworks, provides the procedural roadmap. An incorrect approach of solely focusing on containment without initiating the notification process fails to meet regulatory deadlines for breach notification. This can result in fines and legal repercussions for non-compliance. For instance, under HIPAA, failure to notify individuals and the Department of Health and Human Services without unreasonable delay can incur substantial penalties. Another incorrect approach of immediately notifying all parties without proper investigation and containment risks premature disclosure, potentially alerting the attacker and hindering the investigation, while also causing unnecessary panic and reputational damage if the incident is later determined to be a false positive or a minor issue. This also deviates from a structured incident response, which emphasizes understanding the scope and impact before broad communication. A third incorrect approach of delaying notification until the investigation is fully complete, even if it exceeds regulatory timeframes, is a direct violation of breach notification laws, demonstrating a disregard for legal obligations and stakeholder rights. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Incident identification and assessment. Quickly determine the nature and scope of the incident. 2. Containment and eradication. Take immediate steps to stop the spread and remove the threat. 3. Notification. Initiate communication with relevant parties, legal, management, affected individuals, regulators, as per the incident response plan and legal requirements. 4. Recovery and post-incident analysis. Restore systems and learn from the incident to improve future defenses. This structured approach ensures all critical aspects are addressed in a timely and compliant manner. Question 12. Consider a scenario where a checkpoint security gateway generates an alert indicating potential command and control. C2. Communication originating from an internal workstation. The alert is triggered by a specific network protocol, an unusual destination IP address range that is not explicitly listed as malicious in the threat prevention policy, but exhibits characteristics similar to known C2 patterns. The administrator needs to decide on the immediate course of action. Option A. Escalate the alert to the Security Operations Center, SOC, team for immediate investigation without performing any initial analysis of the traffic logs or policy context. Option B. Immediately block all outbound traffic from the workstation to the suspicious destination IP addresses to prevent any potential data exfiltration or further compromise. Option C. Analyze the traffic logs for the affected workstation to understand the protocol, destination, and volume of communication. Consult the organization's acceptable use policy and threat prevention policy to determine if the traffic aligns with any legitimate business function or if it violates established security guidelines. Based on this comprehensive analysis, implement a targeted rule to either permit, block, or further scrutinize the traffic. Option D. Ignore the alert, assuming it is a false positive due to the destination not being explicitly defined as malicious in the threat prevention policy. The correct answer is C. Analyze the traffic logs for the affected workstation to understand the protocol, destination, and volume of communication. Consult the organization's acceptable use policy and threat prevention policy to determine if the traffic aligns with any legitimate business function or if it violates established security guidelines. Based on this comprehensive analysis, implement a targeted rule to either permit, block, or further scrutinize the traffic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of legitimate users. The administrator must make a decision that impacts both security posture and user productivity. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a dynamic environment where threats and legitimate use cases can evolve. A hasty or overly restrictive decision could cripple essential business functions, while an overly permissive one could expose the organization to significant risk. The administrator's judgment is critical in assessing the true nature of the traffic and its potential impact. The correct approach involves a systematic, evidence-based decision-making process that prioritizes the organization's security policy and risk appetite. This includes thorough investigation, consultation with relevant stakeholders, and a clear understanding of the potential consequences of any action. By analyzing the traffic's characteristics, its source and destination, and its alignment with established security policies, the administrator can make an informed decision that upholds security without unnecessarily hindering operations. This aligns with the principles of responsible security management, which emphasize proactive risk mitigation and adherence to established governance frameworks. An incorrect approach would be to immediately block the traffic based on a superficial resemblance to known malicious patterns. This fails to account for the possibility of legitimate, albeit unusual, traffic and could lead to the disruption of critical business processes. Such an action would demonstrate a lack of due diligence and a failure to follow established incident response procedures, potentially violating internal policies that mandate investigation before action. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the alert entirely, assuming it is a false positive without any verification. This represents a dereliction of duty and a failure to uphold the administrator's responsibility to monitor and protect the network, potentially leading to a security breach that could have been prevented. A third incorrect approach would be to escalate the issue without any initial investigation, overwhelming other teams with potentially benign alerts and demonstrating an inability to perform basic triage. This wastes valuable resources and undermines the administrator's credibility. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that involves 1. Alert triage, initial assessment of the alert's severity and potential impact. 2. Investigation, gathering all relevant data about the suspicious activity, including logs, traffic patterns, and source/destination information. 3. Policy alignment, comparing the observed activity against established security policies and acceptable use guidelines. 4. Risk assessment, evaluating the potential risks associated with allowing the traffic versus blocking it. 5. Stakeholder consultation, engaging with relevant departments, e.g., IT operations, business units, if the decision has significant operational implications. 6. Action and documentation, implementing the chosen course of action and thoroughly documenting the entire process, including the rationale for the decision. Question 13. The investigation demonstrates that a suspicious outbound connection from a critical server containing customer personally identifiable information, PI, has been detected. The security team has identified the connection as unusual, but has not yet determined if data was exfiltrated or the exact nature of the data involved. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Initiate a full forensic investigation to determine the scope and impact of the potential breach, and immediately engage legal counsel and relevant compliance officers to assess notification obligations. Option B. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to prevent any further potential data exfiltration, and begin a manual review of system logs. Option C. Attempt to block the suspicious outbound connection at the firewall and monitor for similar activity without further immediate investigation or consultation. Option D. Wait for the full scope of the potential breach to be definitively identified through automated tools before taking any action, to avoid unnecessary disruption. The correct answer is A. Initiate a full forensic investigation to determine the scope and impact of the potential breach, and immediately engage legal counsel and relevant compliance officers to assess notification obligations. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a critical juncture in network security incident response, specifically concerning the handling of potentially compromised sensitive data. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to contain a security breach with the regulatory obligations and ethical considerations surrounding data privacy and notification. Professionals must navigate the complexities of identifying the scope of the breach, assessing the risk to affected individuals, and determining the appropriate course of action within the defined legal and compliance framework. This scenario demands a structured decision-making process that prioritizes data protection and adherence to established protocols. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of responsible data stewardship and compliance with data protection regulations. By initiating a thorough forensic analysis to determine the nature and extent of the compromise, and simultaneously consulting with legal counsel and relevant regulatory bodies. The security team ensures that all actions are legally sound and ethically defensible. This proactive and informed approach minimizes potential harm to individuals whose data may have been exposed and upholds the organization's commitment to transparency and accountability. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and risk mitigation, which are paramount in cybersecurity incident response. An incorrect approach that involves immediately isolating the affected systems without a clear understanding of the data involved or without consulting legal expertise would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the accidental destruction of critical evidence needed for forensic analysis or, more critically, a failure to meet regulatory notification timelines if sensitive data is indeed involved. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to remediate the issue internally without involving legal counsel or considering potential regulatory reporting requirements, risks overlooking crucial legal obligations, potentially leading to significant fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach, which is to delay any action pending a full, exhaustive investigation that could take an extended period, is also problematic as it fails to address the immediate threat and potential ongoing exposure of data, thereby increasing the risk to individuals and the organization. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with incident identification and assessment, followed by containment and eradication. Crucially, at each stage, legal and compliance teams must be engaged to ensure that actions taken are consistent with regulatory requirements and ethical standards. This framework emphasizes a risk-based approach, prioritizing actions that mitigate the most significant threats while ensuring all legal and reporting obligations are met in a timely and appropriate manner. Question 14. Upon reviewing a request from the marketing department to allow direct outbound access to a specific external cloud-based analytics platform that is not on the approved vendor list, what is the most appropriate course of action for a checkpoint security administrator managing an R81 environment? Option A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the proposed access. Consult with the application owner and potentially the compliance team to understand the business need and potential security implications, and document the decision and any mitigation strategies. Option B. Deny the request outright, citing the platform's absence from the approved vendor list and the potential security risks without further investigation. Option C. Immediately grant the exception to the marketing department to avoid disrupting their workflow and to maintain good interdepartmental relations. Option D. Allow the exception temporarily while investigating the platform, with the understanding that it will be revoked if any security concerns arise. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the proposed access, consult with the application owner and potentially the compliance team to understand the business need and potential security implications, and document the decision and any mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of the business. The administrator must decide whether to enforce a strict security policy that could disrupt legitimate user activity or to allow a potentially risky exception. The challenge lies in the potential for both security breaches and operational downtime, both of which have significant business implications. The administrator's decision directly impacts the organization's security posture and its ability to function effectively. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment and a documented decision-making process that aligns with organizational policies and regulatory requirements. This approach prioritizes understanding the potential impact of the proposed exception on the overall security posture, considering the specific threat landscape, and evaluating the business justification for the exception. It involves consulting with relevant stakeholders, such as the application owner and potentially the compliance department, to ensure that any decision is informed and defensible. This aligns with best practices for security management, which emphasize a risk-based approach to security control implementation and exceptions. The Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81 curriculum emphasizes understanding and applying security policies in a practical, business-aware manner, which includes managing exceptions through a defined process. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing the exception without a formal risk assessment or documentation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established security procedures, creating a blind spot in the organization's security posture. This could violate internal security policies and potentially external regulations that mandate documented security controls and risk management. It also sets a dangerous precedent, encouraging future unauthorized exceptions. Implementing the exception solely based on the user's request, without considering the security implications or consulting with other stakeholders, demonstrates a lack of due diligence. This approach prioritizes user convenience over security, which is a direct contravention of the administrator's responsibility to protect the organization's assets. It exposes the organization to unnecessary risks and could lead to a security incident, with potential legal and financial repercussions. Refusing the exception outright without any attempt to understand the business need or explore alternative, secure solutions is also a failure. While security is paramount, an overly rigid approach can hinder business operations and lead to frustration among users. Professional administrators should strive to find a balance, and a complete refusal without exploring options might indicate a lack of problem-solving skills or an unwillingness to collaborate. This could indirectly lead to users seeking insecure workarounds, ultimately undermining security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the request and its context. This involves gathering all relevant information, including the specific security policy being challenged, the business justification for the exception, and the potential security risks. The next step is to assess the risk associated with the proposed exception, considering the likelihood and impact of a security incident. This assessment should inform a discussion with relevant stakeholders to determine the best course of action. If an exception is granted, it must be documented, with clear justification, mitigation strategy, and a defined review period. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both security best practices and business objectives. Question 15. Market research demonstrates that a new customer relationship management (CRM) application will handle sensitive personal data. As the Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator, you are tasked with ensuring its secure deployment within the existing network infrastructure, adhering to all relevant U.S. federal regulations and organizational security policies. Which of the following approaches best balances security, compliance, and operational needs? Option A. Deploy the CRM application with only basic firewall rules and default security settings to meet the urgent deployment deadline, with a plan to address more advanced security measures in a future phase. Option B. Focus exclusively on securing the network perimeter around the CRM application, assuming internal threats are minimal and application-level vulnerabilities are less critical. Option C. Implement a comprehensive set of security policies and controls, including network segmentation, granular access controls, robust logging and auditing, and regular vulnerability assessments, tailored to the specific risks identified for the CRM application. Option D. Apply a generic security template designed for all new applications, regardless of their specific data handling or risk profile, to expedite the deployment process. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive set of security policies and controls, including network segmentation, granular access controls, robust logging and auditing, and regular vulnerability assessments, tailored to the specific risks identified for the CRM application. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for security administrators, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of the business. The introduction of a new, potentially sensitive application necessitates a thorough risk assessment and the implementation of appropriate security measures. The challenge lies in determining the minimum necessary controls that satisfy regulatory compliance and protect sensitive data without unduly hindering the application's functionality or user experience. The pressure to deploy quickly adds another layer of complexity, potentially tempting shortcuts that could compromise security or compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, risk-based methodology aligned with the principles of security best practices and regulatory frameworks relevant to the exam's jurisdiction, implicitly U.S. federal regulations for a U.S.-based exam like 156-215, 81, which often aligns with NIST guidelines. This approach prioritizes understanding the application's data sensitivity, its intended use, and potential threats. Implementing a layered security strategy, including network segmentation, access controls, and robust logging, directly addresses these risks. The emphasis on documentation and ongoing monitoring ensures that security posture is maintained and that compliance requirements are continuously met. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to effective security and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a generic one-size-fits-all security policy without understanding the specific risks of the new application is a failure. This approach ignores the principle of risk assessment and can lead to either over-provisioning, impacting performance and cost, or under-provisioning, leaving the application vulnerable. It fails to meet the regulatory requirement of implementing controls commensurate with the risk. Deploying the application with minimal security controls to meet a tight deadline, with the intention of addressing security later, is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. This directly violates the principle of security by design and exposes the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and non-compliance with data protection regulations. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to protect sensitive information. Focusing solely on perimeter security without considering internal threats or application-specific vulnerabilities is another flawed approach. Modern security threats often originate internally or bypass perimeter defenses. A comprehensive security strategy must address multiple layers of defense, including application-level security and internal access controls, to meet regulatory expectations for comprehensive data protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the business context and regulatory landscape. This involves 1. Risk identification and assessment. Understand the data being processed, potential threats and vulnerabilities. 2. Control selection. Choose security controls that are proportionate to the identified risks and align with regulatory requirements. 3. Implementation and testing. Deploy controls effectively and verify their functionality. 4. Monitoring and review. Continuously assess the effectiveness of controls and adapt to evolving threats and regulations. This structured approach ensures that security decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both business objectives and compliance mandates. Question 16. Examination of the data shows that a recent phishing campaign successfully bypassed initial email security filters, leading to several user workstations being compromised. The IT security team needs to conduct an impact assessment to prioritize remediation efforts and inform future security control enhancements. Which of the following approaches best aligns with a thorough and effective impact assessment in this context? Option A. Focus remediation efforts exclusively on the workstations exhibiting the most sophisticated malware signatures, assuming these pose the greatest immediate threat. Option B. Conduct a technical scan of all affected workstations to identify vulnerabilities, and then implement patches without consulting business stakeholders on the potential operational impact. Option C. Prioritize remediation based solely on the number of compromised workstations, focusing on restoring network connectivity for the largest affected groups first. Option D. Engage with business unit leaders to identify critical business functions, the data supporting them, and the potential consequences, financial, reputational, legal, if those functions or data are disrupted or compromised. The correct answer is C. Prioritize remediation based solely on the number of compromised workstations, focusing on restoring network connectivity for the largest affected groups first. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational realities of a business. The core difficulty lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of a security incident on different business functions and data types, which is a fundamental component of an impact assessment. This requires not just technical understanding, but also an appreciation for business processes and their dependencies. The correct approach involves a systematic and collaborative process to identify critical assets, understand their interdependencies, and quantify the potential consequences of their compromise. This aligns with best practices in risk management and regulatory compliance, which mandate that organizations understand their exposure to cyber threats. Specifically, for the 156-215 R81 exam, this relates to understanding how checkpoint solutions can be configured to mitigate identified risks based on impact. The regulatory framework implicitly requires organizations to have a reasonable understanding of what they are protecting and why, which is the essence of an impact assessment. An incorrect approach might involve making assumptions without validation, leading to an underestimation or overestimation of risk. For instance, focusing solely on technical vulnerabilities without considering the business context means the assessment might miss critical impacts on revenue, reputation, or legal obligations. Another failure would be to exclude key stakeholders, such as business unit managers, who possess vital knowledge about the operational impact of system downtime or data breaches. This exclusion violates the principle of comprehensive risk assessment and can lead to misinformed security decisions, potentially resulting in non-compliance with internal policies or external regulations that require due diligence in security planning. A third incorrect approach might be to prioritize only the most technically complex systems, neglecting simpler but equally critical systems that might have a higher business impact if compromised. This selective focus fails to provide a holistic view of organizational risk. Professionals should approach such situations by first establishing clear objectives for the impact assessment, then engaging all relevant stakeholders to gather information, and finally documenting findings rigorously. This structured approach ensures that the assessment is comprehensive, accurate, and actionable, forming a solid foundation for security policy development and control implementation. Question 17. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in network latency and a rise in packet loss across the organization's network, coinciding with recent user complaints about slow application performance. The checkpoint security gateway is identified as a potential bottleneck. The administrator needs to address this issue while maintaining the integrity of the security posture. Which of the following actions represents the most professional and effective approach to resolving this performance degradation? Option A. Temporarily disable the threat prevention blades and other security features on the checkpoint gateway to see if performance improves, and then re-enable them one by one to identify the culprit. Option B. Immediately roll back the entire security policy to a previous known stable version without further investigation, assuming the recent changes are the sole cause of the performance issues. Option C. Analyze checkpoint logs and reports to identify specific security rules or features that are consuming excessive resources or causing inspection delays, and then propose targeted optimizations to the security policy based on this data. Option D. Increase the hardware resources of the checkpoint security gateway without analyzing the current configuration or traffic patterns, assuming the gateway is simply underpowered. The correct answer is C. Analyze checkpoint logs and reports to identify specific security rules or features that are consuming excessive resources or causing inspection delays, and then propose targeted optimizations to the security policy based on this data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational demands of a growing organization. The performance analysis, indicating increased latency and packet loss, coupled with user complaints, directly impacts business operations. The administrator must identify the root cause without compromising security posture or violating any applicable regulations. The challenge lies in discerning whether the security policy is the direct cause of the performance degradation, or if other factors are at play, and then implementing a solution that is both effective from a security perspective and acceptable from a performance standpoint, all while adhering to the checkpoint R81 framework and any implicit or explicit regulatory requirements for data protection and operational continuity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation that prioritizes understanding the impact of the security policy on network traffic. This means leveraging checkpoints logging and reporting capabilities to analyze traffic patterns, identify specific rules causing delays, and correlate these with the observed performance issues. The administrator should then propose targeted adjustments to the security policy, such as optimizing rule order, refining application control signatures, or implementing more efficient inspection methods based on this analysis. This aligns with best practices for security management, which emphasize continuous monitoring, performance tuning, and risk-based decision-making. From a regulatory perspective, this approach ensures that security measures are proportionate and do not unduly hinder legitimate business operations, which can be an implicit requirement for data protection and operational resilience under various frameworks that might influence security policy design, even if not explicitly detailed in the R81 syllabus itself. The focus is on evidence-based adjustments rather than broad, potentially security-weakening changes. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling security policies or specific features without a thorough understanding of their impact is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly compromises the organization's security posture, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access, modification, or destruction, which violates fundamental principles of data protection and information security. Such an action would be considered negligent and could lead to severe consequences, including regulatory fines and reputational damage. Implementing broad, untested changes to the security policy without correlating them to the performance analysis is also problematic. This could inadvertently create new security vulnerabilities or further degrade performance. It demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and a failure to follow a structured problem-solving methodology. This approach risks violating the principle of least privilege and could lead to unintended security gaps. Ignoring user complaints and performance metrics while continuing with the current security policy, assuming it is inherently correct, is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a lack of responsiveness to operational needs and a failure to adapt security measures to the evolving environment. It can lead to decreased productivity and user dissatisfaction, and in a broader context, could be seen as a failure to maintain an effective and efficient security system. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach performance issues related to security policies by first establishing a baseline of normal performance, and then meticulously analyzing logs and traffic data to pinpoint the source of the degradation. This involves understanding the specific functionalities of checkpoint R81, such as policy optimization, threat prevention inspection methods, and reporting tools. The decision-making process should be iterative. Analyze, hypothesize, test in a controlled environment if possible, implement targeted changes, and reevaluate. This data-driven approach ensures that security remains effective while operational impact is minimized. Professionals must always consider the potential security implications of any change and document their findings and decisions thoroughly. Question 18. The performance metrics show a sustained, unusual spike in outbound traffic from a specific server segment, coinciding with a slight increase in latency for internal applications hosted on that segment. Option A. Immediately block all outbound traffic from the affected server segment to contain any potential data exfiltration. Option B. Assume the spike is due to a legitimate but unannounced software update and monitor the situation for another 24 hours. Option C. Initiate a deep packet inspection on the affected segment to identify the nature of the outbound traffic and correlate it with any unusual internal system events. Option D. Increase the bandwidth allocated to the affected server segment to alleviate the perceived latency issue. The correct answer is C. Initiate a deep packet inspection on the affected segment to identify the nature of the outbound traffic and correlate it with any unusual internal system events. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, interpreting performance data to identify potential security issues without causing undue disruption. The professional challenge lies in distinguishing between normal operational fluctuations and indicators of a security incident or a misconfiguration that could lead to a security vulnerability. A hasty or incorrect interpretation can lead to wasted resources, unnecessary system downtime, or, conversely, a missed security threat. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation that prioritizes understanding the root cause of the observed performance anomaly. This aligns with best professional practices and the implicit requirements of maintaining a secure and operational network environment. Specifically, it emphasizes a data-driven, analytical process that seeks to validate hypotheses before taking action. This methodical approach ensures that any remediation steps are targeted and effective, minimizing the risk of unintended consequences. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume a security breach and initiate broad, disruptive countermeasures without sufficient evidence. This could involve blocking traffic indiscriminately, which would violate the principle of least privilege and potentially disrupt legitimate business operations. Such an action, if not justified by concrete evidence of a threat, could be considered a failure to adhere to operational best practices and could lead to service degradation, impacting users and potentially violating service-level agreements. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the anomaly as insignificant without proper investigation. This failure to investigate could lead to a missed security incident, allowing an attacker to gain a foothold or exfiltrate data, which would be a significant ethical and professional failure in protecting organizational assets. The professional decision-making process should involve 1. Acknowledging and documenting the observed anomaly. 2. Gathering additional contextual data, e.g., logs, traffic patterns, system events, to understand the scope and nature of the anomaly. 3. Formulating hypotheses about potential causes, including both security-related and operational issues. 4. Testing these hypotheses through targeted investigation and analysis. 5. Implementing the most appropriate solution based on validated findings, prioritizing minimal disruption to legitimate operations. Question 19. Analysis of the potential impact of a new intrusion prevention system, IPS, signature on a critical customer-facing web application, which is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, requires a systematic evaluation. Which of the following approaches best balances security enhancement with operational continuity? Option A. Deploy the IPS signature immediately to address the potential threat, and then troubleshoot any performance issues that arise with the web application. Option B. Disable the web application's IPS protection temporarily until the performance issues are resolved, prioritizing immediate application availability over potential security vulnerabilities. Option C. Rely solely on the security team's technical expertise to determine if the IPS signature poses a risk, and deploy it if no immediate technical conflicts are identified. Option D. Conduct a thorough impact assessment involving application owners and IT operations, including performance testing in a staging environment, before deploying the IPS signature to production. The correct answer is A. Deploy the IPS signature immediately to address the potential threat, and then troubleshoot any performance issues that arise with the web application. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The core difficulty lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of a proposed security policy change on critical business functions. A misjudgment can lead to either an unacceptable security risk or significant operational disruption, both of which have serious implications for the organization. The correct approach involves a structured and comprehensive impact assessment. This process, aligned with best practices in information security management and regulatory compliance frameworks, such as those implicitly expected by the Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator R81 certification, which focuses on practical implementation within a defined operational context, requires understanding the business context of the application, identifying all stakeholders, and systematically evaluating the potential consequences of the security change. This includes considering data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, as well as the application's performance and user accessibility. By engaging with application owners and conducting thorough testing, the administrator ensures that security measures are effective without causing undue harm to business operations. This proactive and collaborative approach minimizes risk and demonstrates due diligence. An incorrect approach would be to implement the security policy change without a proper impact assessment. This could manifest in several ways. One failure would be to proceed based solely on the security team's technical assessment, disregarding input from business units. This neglects the critical aspect of business continuity and can lead to operational downtime, violating implicit organizational policies and potentially regulatory requirements related to service availability. Another failure would be to implement the change with minimal or no testing, assuming it will not cause issues. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for potential adverse effects, which could lead to data loss or corruption, impacting compliance and trust. Finally, a failure to document the assessment process and its outcomes leaves the organization vulnerable to audits and unable to demonstrate a reasoned approach to security management. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the business criticality of the system or application in question. This involves identifying key stakeholders, including business owners, IT operations, and end users. The next step is to define the scope of the proposed change and its potential impact across different dimensions: security, performance, availability, and usability. A risk-based methodology should then be applied to prioritize potential impacts and develop mitigation strategies. Collaboration and communication are paramount throughout this process, ensuring that all relevant parties are informed and have an opportunity to provide input. Finally, thorough testing and validation in a controlled environment before full deployment are essential to confirm the effectiveness of the security controls and the absence of negative operational side effects. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that a new cloud-based collaboration tool is being considered for widespread adoption across the organization. While this tool promises enhanced productivity and streamlined communication, its integration with the existing checkpoint security infrastructure and its potential impact on data security and privacy have not been thoroughly evaluated. What is the most appropriate next step for the security administrator? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential security risks, evaluate their severity, and define mitigation strategies before deployment. Option B. Deploy the tool in a limited pilot phase and monitor for any immediate security alerts or anomalies without a formal assessment process. Option C. Prioritize the tool's performance and user experience benefits, assuming that the vendor has implemented adequate security measures. Option D. Proceed with the deployment of the collaboration tool to leverage its productivity benefits and address any security issues that arise post-implementation. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential security risks, evaluate their severity, and define mitigation strategies before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in security administration, where a new, potentially beneficial technology is introduced without a thorough understanding of its impact on existing security controls and compliance posture. The challenge lies in balancing innovation and operational efficiency with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant environment. The administrator must proactively identify and mitigate risks before deployment, rather than reacting to incidents after they occur, which is often more costly and damaging. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment. This process systematically identifies potential risks and vulnerabilities associated with the new technology, evaluates their likelihood and potential consequences, and determines appropriate mitigation strategies. For a checkpoint certified security administrator R81, this aligns with best practices for managing security infrastructure. The assessment should consider how the new technology interacts with existing checkpoint security policies, logging mechanisms, and threat intelligence feeds. It also ensures that the deployment adheres to any relevant regulatory frameworks that mandate risk management and security controls, even if not explicitly stated in the question. The underlying principle of due diligence in security operations is universally applicable and implicitly expected in professional practice. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying the technology without any prior assessment is a direct violation of due diligence principles in cybersecurity. It exposes the organization to unknown risks, potentially leading to security breaches, data loss, or service disruptions. This approach fails to proactively identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited, and it bypasses the necessary steps to ensure compatibility with existing security infrastructure, such as checkpoint gateways and management servers. Implementing the technology and then addressing any security issues as they arise is a reactive and inefficient strategy. This approach significantly increases the risk of a successful attack before defenses can be put in place. It also implies a lack of foresight and planning, which is unprofessional. From a compliance perspective, this reactive stance can be seen as a failure to implement adequate security measures, potentially leading to regulatory penalties if a breach occurs. Focusing solely on the perceived performance benefits without considering security implications is a critical error. While performance is important, it should never come at the expense of security. This approach ignores the fundamental principle that security is a prerequisite for reliable and trustworthy operations. It also overlooks the potential for the new technology to introduce new attack vectors or to interfere with the effectiveness of existing security controls managed by checkpoint. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and risk-based approach to technology adoption. This involves a structured process of evaluation, assessment, and planning. When considering new technologies, a security administrator should always ask: 1. What are the potential security risks introduced by this technology? 2. How does this technology interact with our current security infrastructure, e.g., Checkpoint firewalls, IPS, VPN. 3. What are the potential compliance implications of deploying this technology? 4. What mitigation strategies are necessary to address identified risks? 5. What is the rollback plan if the technology causes unforeseen issues? By following this framework, administrators can make informed decisions that balance innovation with security and compliance requirements.